Hey everybody, welcome back to another Mustang video. In this video, what I want to do is I want to get the master cylinder installed. It's all bled and ready to go in. I did buy the wrong master cylinder, so I had to swap. I looked at them carefully and the only difference was the piston. And it's the same size piston. They're both 1-inch pistons, same length piston. The only difference is the other one is meant for the power brake rod, and the other one was meant for the manual brake rod, and this one's meant for the power brake rod. So all I had to do was swap the seals on the piston, put it back in, put the rod in, and I think it's fine and ready to go. If it's not, then I'll just stick it on a shelf and buy the right one. I'm not going to cry about it. So that's going to go back in, and honestly, by the time I get done dragging myself in and out from under the dash a few times, that may be all I do, because that is really difficult for me. I've got plugs. I've got plug wires. I would also like to get those put in. I'd like to fill the float bowl up with gas, and I'd like to hear this thing pop off. Those are my goals for this video. How much of that I'll get done, I have no clue. Let's at least get the master cylinder put in place and the bolts in. And yes, the master cylinder has bolts. Alrighty, I got that master cylinder back in there. The lines are back in. It's connected back up under the dash. And I gotta tell you, I don't think I could have done it without this. Getting that spring clip started, there was no way I could see it and have my hand in there at the same time. But I could poke this in. I could poke that up in there along with my hand and then watch the screen and see what I was doing. And then when I got it close, I could just tweak it a little bit and I could get a perfect view of it on the screen. I'm telling you, if I was younger, that still would have been a pain in the ass, but I wasn't any smaller, but at least I was more flexible. And that's the I shouldn't say this. That's the problem as you get older. The things you want to be limp get inflexible, and the things you want to be inflexible go limp on you. I didn't say that. I did not say that. Anyway, I'm going to put a link to this below. Let me tell you what, I don't care if you buy one from my link or not, but if you don't have one of these, if I didn't have one of these, I probably would have had to pull the steering column down and other stuff out of the way to make room just to see that. This made it, I'm not going to say it made it easy, but it made it possible. Now that that's completely back in, I want to get the plugs and the plug wires back in. But before I put the plugs in it, I'm going to gap them, and I'm going to look at every one of them in the Ansel spark plug tester that I reviewed here a few weeks ago, and I will put a link to that below as well. And thanks again to everybody who uses my links. I really do appreciate it. If this were my CJ7, I might do that and I might not, but the plugs in that thing, I get those plugs out of there in 5 minutes. This thing takes me an hour to get the plugs out. I don't want to have to do that, so I want to look at every one in this first. So I'm going to take these into my other shop, and we are going to, my other shop is my garage, not my shed, by the way. I don't want it to make it sound like I'm some big deal. I'm going to take these in, I'm going to gap them, I'm going to look at all the spark on all of them on this before I put them in. And then if I remember right, my technique for getting these in was to take about a 10 or 12 inch long piece of 5/16 or 3/8 fuel line, I think it was 5/16, and push it over the end of the plug, and then use that as a tool to help me get them fed in and turn to start. But anyway, let's look at them on this, let's gap them, and we'll see what we have. Okay, I have all the plugs now gapped at 035 with a wire spark plug gauge, and I am now going to run them all through this. I'm going to try and get this testing on camera. When I did it for the review of this, I used my Canon EOS M3, and I had it set to automatic focus, and it was struggling. So I'm going to try using the camera phone this time and see if that does any better. If it doesn't, I apologize. I'm not going to battle to make it perfect, but I'd like to get it on there so you guys can see it. Okay, so here are the first two plugs. Let's turn it up to about what an idle would be. There's an idle right there. They're both looking good. There's 1,000 or so. There's 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, and then there's max as high as it'll go. So they both, I think, look pretty good. So let's try the next two. So here are the next two, and I know the gaps don't look the same, but they are. I've double checked them. So there we go at about an idle. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, and there's max it can do. So I'm very happy with these two as well. Here's the next two. And there's an idle, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, and max. And I'm not looking at the dial, I'm just guessing at it, so you'll have to bear with me there. And back to about an idle. So, very pleased with those two. Let's try the last two. And idle, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, and max on the machine. And what is max on the machine? Max on the machine is 6,000. So I think I was pretty close. And let me tip it up and we'll go back to what I think is an idle. There's in between 500 and 1,000. So that's about an idle in park. You see I got a little bit of sparking at the bottom of this one. There we go, a little sparking at the base. You want to, ow! You want to kind of be careful how you touch it because it will bite you. But there we go. Now it's set down in better. You can see they're very similar with the 750. Very pleased with these. I'm going to go ahead and put these in. Okay, I'm going to get the plugs in now. I have a piece of this rubber hose to use to kind of feed the plug back in there and get it started. And yes, I am going to put anti-seize on them. I put anti-seize on everything. I know you'll all get down in the comments and say, but Chuck, you can't put anti-seize on things that have to be torqued. Yes, I can. I've been doing it for 50 plus years. I have never in my life once had a reason to regret putting anti-seize on everything. I'll even put them on head bolts. So you can get down there and you can say whatever you want, but not only have I never regretted it, I believe that it saved my ass on more than one occasion. So I'm going to set a time lapse up here because otherwise I don't really want you to hear me cussing and yelling at this. So time lapse coming up. Okay, the spark plugs are back in and tight, but most of it was fairly easy. Using the piece of rubber hose to get it started is really a godsend. It really makes it easy. And just as I remembered, this side, the passenger side, is more difficult. Don't know also if you caught it during the time lapse, but I got the plug socket stuck on the plug on this one, and it must have taken me 10 minutes to get it out. I couldn't get a tool back on it. I was going to take the plug and the socket out together. Couldn't get that done. Finally, I managed to get it to loosen and managed to get the socket off it, but it was not easy to get back off. The problem with having to go in at an extreme angle with a wobbly on them is you do take a chance of the plug being slightly cocked in the socket, which will jam the plug in the socket and you won't be able to get it back off easy. If you go too cocked in it, you take a chance of snapping the top off the spark plug, which I have done on this car many years ago. Fortunately, it did not happen this time. Another thing is these plugs have the tapered seat. They don't have the crush washer, so there is no real feel for it. They tighten down and they stop dead, and there's no real torque or turning after that. A torque wrench would be pointless on this anyway without pulling the engine out, because you're going through wobblies. So they're in. Going to get the plug wires in. Distributor cap is marked number 1. I know the firing order, and the cylinder numbers are also marked on the manifold, so that shouldn't be as difficult as the spark plugs anyway. So going to get that done next. All right, something worthy of note on the spark plug wires: because you cannot get a tool onto or your fingers or anything onto the plug, the boot itself down on the plug, it's a really wise idea to put a buttload of silicone lubricant on it, so you don't have to tear it to get it off like I had to do on the old ones. The cap is looking pretty good. I didn't look at the inside of it. I was getting sparks, so I'm not too concerned about it. Cap's stupid easy to replace on this one anyway, so I'm not even going to look at it. Inside it's clean. I sprayed it out with contact cleaner, but there's no corrosion or anything in it. The plug wires, they did not provide me silicone lubricant with the plug wires. It's not only is stuff getting more expensive, but they're getting chintzier and chintzier with it. I have the 4 shortest ones are the exact same length. They're going to be 1 and whatever. They're going to be the front 2 on the bank. Then I have 2 that are slightly longer. They're going to be the third ones back. And then I have 2 very long ones, and they're obviously going to be the back ones. So I'm going to get these boots filled with silicone lubricant, and I'm going to get these put on. Alrighty, I have the spark plugs and the spark plug wires back on. The spark plug wires aren't routed the way that I want them to be. I'm not worried about that right now. These valve covers, they've got these metal tabs sticking up, and they're on both sides. And there used to be a metal piece that stuck up that had 4, they weren't really holes, they were round holes, but they were cut as slots. And there were grommets in it, and they held the plug wires. I don't know where those metal pieces are. I may have them. They may be back in the trunk or in the back seat, and I'm just not seeing them. But right now, I don't have them. I may have to 3D print something, and I can do that easily enough. That might actually be interesting. I'd love to have the stock pieces, but you know what? If I don't have them, I don't have them. There might be repros. There's repros for almost everything on these old Mustangs. But some of these ones, like this one that was made in California and has that Thermactor in it, that's a little bit tougher sell. Now, one thing, this car is the hardest car I've ever worked on to replace spark plug wires on. I'm sure there's worse. I've just never worked on one. And one of the hardest things is, I don't know if you can see it down there, there's no way to get your fingers on the spark plug boots to push them on. You can get them started and you can wiggle them down, but to get the metal connector down over the spark plug, it's just, and this front one in here, it's the worst of all. I remember this side being the absolute worst. I mean, it's hard to even see that spark plug boot, much less get your hands or fingers down in there. So what you wind up with is 6 or 8 different pairs of pliers, all with different lengths and different angles on the end, and you have no choice but to use pliers to try and wiggle and push and snap that metal cap down over the tip of the spark plug. I mean, you just got to be as kind of careful as you can, but that's pretty much what you got to do. Next step on this is I'd really just like to put some gas in the carburetor, in the float bowl, and see if she'll bark. And yeah, let's try that. So it is the next day. It is a beautiful 65-degree day in the Arizona desert. Today is Sunday. So all I really want to do today is I want to hear it pop off. It's all I really want to do. I don't want to try and get it to idle. I just want to get it to pop off. And then I'm going to go inside, cook up a big bunch of eggs and bacon and hash browns for me, the wife, and the dog. I'm going to take it easy for the rest of the day. And the reason I want to hear it pop off is just to give me a little bit of excitement, to come out and work on it again. I just think that's really important in these type of projects. Give yourself some enthusiasm. So I went out first thing this morning after walking the dog, and I got 5 gallons of fresh fuel. I put 12 ounces of it in this thing and a WD-40 cap full of 2-stroke oil just to kind of help with the lubrication, and maybe even, you know, the accelerator pump and things like that will come back to life. I have blocked off the inlet to the carburetor, and the fuel line is not connected. I don't think there's anything in that tank, and I'm not sure the fuel pump works, but if it does work and there's something in that tank, I don't want it pumped up into the carburetor. I'll have to watch this to make sure it doesn't spray out. And you know what I ought to have? I ought to have a fire extinguisher. Got my fire extinguisher. Needle is in the green, and key is turned on. Battery is not connected yet. Let's get some fuel in it. I'm gonna pump a bunch in the float bowl, because if it does start, I wouldn't mind it if it idled for, you know, 5-10 seconds. I don't think it will, but I wouldn't mind it if it did. And let's put a little down there. Let's hook the battery up and see what it does. There we go. All right, here we go. Let's make some noise. Nothing. Nothing, because this is disconnected. All right, now let's make some noise. Want a little more than that. Let's give it a little bit more. What do you say? Let's get some more in the float bowl. I suspect that carburetor is going to have a kit put in it. Wants to. Oh, I got a vacuum line open. Let's get that back on. Don't need that wide open. You know what? I'm pretty happy with that. Let's give it one more shot because I did enjoy that. All right, that's enough to make me very happy. The engine, I'm getting lots of smoke out the back because I did squirt a bunch of oil down into the cylinders, but I'm pretty happy with that. When I come back out, double check the timing, make sure the carb is working. I'm going to put gas in the tank, check to see if the fuel pump is working, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. It's definitely going to run and start when I get the carburation and the fuel figured out. And we'll go from there. I got a bunch of hoses, cracked and broken hoses and things like that to deal with. But yeah, she's going to run. And I think now I am going to go in and make brunch and be happy and be excited for the next video. So thank you all for watching. If you like what I do, please like and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. And maybe we'll have this thing idling.